Welcome everybody to the retro review of New Year's Evolution. No, the New Year's Revolution 2005. Welcome everybody, and this episode of Tap Out Talk, we are going to go over a new series here, what I like to call is the Retro Revolution and Review. So this is going to be the Revolution, New Year's Revolution review of 2005. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you the highlights, delights, and since we are on the cusp of a brand new year, we are going to do a review of this pay-per-view back in the day of 2005 live from Puerto Rico. And we are going to give you the highlights, delights, just like we do here on Tap Out Talk, and give you a little bit of a review of what was once a pay-per-view of the past, and the WWE is looking to revamp here in 2022 with New Year's Day 1 coming to you live this weekend. So let's see how good New Year's Revolution was the very first time the WWE tried to do New Year's wrestling. So let's get right in. And we're going to start out with our opening match, again, live from Puerto Rico, and it's going to be a World Tag Team Championship match. Now, this pay-per-view was given as a Raw-only pay-per-view. This was back when Raw and SmackDown were split into two different, groups, as it is today. However, Raw would have its own pay-per-views, and SmackDown would put on its very own pay-per-views. One of the bad things about this model back then was it would split up the talent so much that some of these pay-per-views would seem very lackluster. But I did like the concept of, each show having their own talent. So back then, though, they only had the World Tag Team Championship, and so there wasn't two sets of titles either. So this one has Eugene and William Regal. If you guys remember the Eugene character, he was the mentally challenged nephew of Eric Bischoff that was brought into the storyline, played by Nick Dinsmore, an independent wrestler, and William Regal. You guys need no introduction there. And they defended their tag team titles against Christian and Tyson Tomko, who was the bodyguard for Christian Cage back in the day. So it starts out, Eugene comes out wearing Hulk Hogan attire, and the match begins mostly with, comedy, and we see Eugene making use of that kind of comedy, crawling on all four legs throughout the ring like Junkyard Dog, impersonating. The whole thing with Eugene was he was supposed to impersonate his favorite childhood wrestling character, so it was kind of like, a fan come to life in the ring, right? Eugene goes to the outside to cheer with the fans, and both Tomko and Christian chase him down, and Eugene then goes underneath the ring, crawling underneath. Tomko and Cage are like sitting there wondering what's going on, and eventually he comes back out, and he attacks both guys from behind the ring. Tyson Tomko finally gets a choke slam, and now they have the advantage on Eugene. William Regal is finally tagged into the match later, and he takes a rough hit right on his nose, and actually his nose starts bleeding here really bad. And then Cage and Tomko are having their way with Regal. Eugene almost got the hot tag, but they knocked him off of the apron instead. And finally, Eugene gets tagged in, and Eugene comes in with an Ultimate Warrior type moveset, using the gorilla press, swinging guys to the ropes. And in the battle, Eugene actually ends up hurting his leg for real and tearing his knee out really bad. And Regal distracts, which allows Eugene to roll up Tyson Tomko and get the win for the title defense. So one thing is this pay-per-view was very cursed, and after the match, Eugene's attended to by the referee and helped to the back. So here was, our thoughts here on Tap Out Talk about this. It was a good match for what it was, and it was meant to be a crowd opener and to create excitement, and it did that since Eugene was over with the crowd as a favorite, right? I mean, how can you not like the guy? So ultimately, this was the first of many major injuries that night. So far, they were, not really doing so well, and Eugene was out for many months after this, so you could feel like they had to end the match very quickly and very shortly once it got started. And so we then immediately, after they help Eugene back, we cut to back behind the scenes. This is back in the Diva era, and we see Christy Hemme arriving near the pool area of Puerto Rico, and then we go back to ringside, and we're just, basically just, I guess she's enjoying her time in Puerto Rico, I suppose. Let's go to the next match. All right, this one was Lita versus Trish Stratus for the women's Women's Championship. And this is a great rivalry in the WWE, and this was the payoff match. These two prior had some amazing matches, and even one of the greatest matches on Raw for a women's match ever. And this was supposed to be that big payoff for the match with Lita defending her championship against Trish. We're given a history package of Trish calling her fat and pregnant. This was a fight breaking out. Then it caused Trish to have to wear a mask and defend her title on Monday Night Raw in one of, like I said, the best women's matches on TV. Lita wins the title, and then here we are at New Year's Revolution for the rematch because Lita won that match on Raw. So it's interesting because this was back when Lita was pregnant for a while with Kane's baby, according to the storylines, if you guys remember that back in the day. And that was kind of an interesting, cringe moment, right? So the match begins with immediate jump off the apron, and it actually right away just caused Lita to hurt her knee. So this is now strike 2 for the WWE in their matches. So it caused the match to finish sooner again than expected and was a quick finish to this one. Trish gets the pin on Lita for the win to win back her championship. Lita is shown being checked out by doctors and then helped to the back locker room area. So again, tap out, talk thoughts here. I can't help but feel like this was supposed to be an even bigger payoff match than Raw, but the short stoppage really took the wind out of the sails for, so far for the evening. And now we have 2 major injuries in a row in 2 of the matches. And so you could just feel like, the crowd was getting a little anxious, like they, and I can imagine, Vince and company in the back just being really upset because they now have 2 matches that didn't really go as according to plan. We're shown another diva entering the pool area behind the scenes and to relax in San Juan. And this is, obviously trying to build towards something, but we don't know yet what. So this will probably continue throughout the night, I'm thinking. Edge is trying to get out of the match by letting Christian have his world title Elimination Chamber match. So Edge really wants out of this match for some reason. He wants to avoid Shawn Michaels according to storyline. Shawn Michaels shows up because he's the referee, and he said he will call it down the line as the referee in the main event. But if he is provoked, well, then he said, I'll enjoy that. So that's a little bit backstage segment we get. Let's go to our next match, and let's see if we do any better. And we get another championship defended, and it was the Intercontinental Championship, Shelton Benjamin versus Maven. You guys remember Maven? Maven was a first ever Tough Enough competition winner, and he was a school teacher from, I wanted to say Cincinnati, keep me honest on that, but I know he was a school teacher prior to trying out for the WWE, and then he made it for, quite a few years. One of his notable things was eliminating The Undertaker from the Royal Rumble. That was a big thing for him. But here he's going for the Intercontinental Championship, and Shelton Benjamin comes out, followed by Maven. Maven, before he wrestles, he gets to the outside of the ring and starts getting into it with the crowd. He grabs a microphone, stands on a chair, and begins yelling at the crowd that he is going to talk really slow because they are stupid, and Puerto Ricans talk gibberish and probably no English, according to Maven. He then, in Spanish, yells at them to shut their mouths. I'm not going to attempt to reenact that here because I don't speak Spanish. Maven then says he is going to wrestle and he tells Shelton that he will only wrestle him in the United States of America, and then he walks up the ramp. So Maven is leaving the match, and so I'm like, ooh, I don't know if they're trying to really get the crowd in this, but Maven runs then back down to the ring before the count out. Shelton rolls him up quickly for the pin. 1, 2, 3. And is that really it? Is that really over? Is WWE going to do this in their 3rd match? That's another quick, short finish. Maven gets on the microphone and yells at Shelton to get back in the ring because that actually didn't count. He wasn't ready, and he wants a rematch right now. So he then calls Shelton to, the second women's, he calls Shelton Benjamin the second women's champion of the WWE. The crowd begins to chant, na, 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 hey, 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 goodbye. This was enough to get Shelton back in the ring and ring the bell, and Shelton hits a T-bone suplex right away. Boom, pin, and 1, 2, 3 again. And then he defended his title against Maven. So again, entertaining segment. I don't even want to call this a match. I want to say it's a segment in between matches. Not much of a wrestling match here, but it did show how much of a heel they were trying to turn Maven into back in the day. So again, I think, at this point, the WWE's 0 for 3 in their New Year's Revolution idea, right? So divas are shown at poolside giving each other back rubs. Okay, let's move on. Guys, really quick, if you're enjoying the channel and everything, thank you for you guys that do already subscribe and like and share the material. It really helps me out. If you guys give this video a like, that'd be great. Thanks. Let's move on. So our next matchup is Jerry the King Lawler versus Muhammad Hassan. And again, if you guys don't remember a lot of these wrestlers, it does really show you that how much the WWE has a turnover in wrestlers. But Muhammad Hassan was a wrestler that was set up to be right after the days of 9/11, and he was set up to be a Middle Eastern terrorist type wrestler. It didn't end well for the WWE for Muhammad Hassan, and I may have to do something on that later. But ultimately, we're given a package of Jerry Lawler and Muhammad Hassan for having a formal debate that ended with an attack on Jerry Lawler setting up this match. Muhammad, his pre-match interview, says that he feels exactly like the people of Puerto Rico and their citizens. He says he feels connected to them because they are second-class citizens just like him. Ooh, real heel heat. Hassan was really good back in the day. Daivari was his manager at the time, and they were really good at getting heat. It's just unfortunately he was, eventually asked to be, let go from the WWE because the network basically had issues with his character. The match started out with a lockup, and then Muhammad gets a count of about 5 body slams on Jerry the King Lawler before he falls out of the ring, recovering with Jim Ross helping him out a bit. So in this match, Jim Ross was actually in the corner of Jerry Lawler, which made it, I want to say, is a little weird because there was no commentary for the match because JR was actually as a corner man. So it just was a match in the ring, and it really makes you realize that, man, they really do chant. There's a lot that goes on in the match that the announcers help us with. Lawler gets back in the ring. They wrestle a bit. Hassan then has the cover and the turnbuckle, and the referees see it and basically attempts to put it back on. Lawler gets a roll-up for a late pin count and gets a 2. Hassan then pushes Lawler into the corner with the exposed turnbuckles and then attempts his camel clutch, but there was no submission. The crowd at this point begins to chant, "Boring, boring, boring," right, over and over again. And then they get a dead quiet as the men continue. That in the industry, a dead quiet is the worst that you could have because that means the fans aren't even way for it or against it. They just do not care. This isn't the best situation for Muhammad Hassan. And basically, it's kind of really just a bad debut match for him. This was his first match in the WWE. Lawler is mounting a comeback with some stiff punches and dropkick. Then Lawler jumps from the top rope with a fist on Hassan for a 2 count. You can tell they want to take this match home at this point. Lawler tries another, but this time Daivari gets involved, causing the pin to stop. Finally, we get back in the ring. There's a distraction. Hassan hits his finisher and gets the pinfall on Lawler. So again, my thoughts here, the crowd just was not into this one, and they got bored quickly. And it really showed. It came across as boring on TV too, since there was no commentary to help sell this one overall. So right now, I'm going to say they are 0 for 4 in this New Year's Revolution 2005 pay-per-view. And man, it was almost just great to watch just to see how cringe it was. But man, this was one of their worst pay-per-views with just minimal payoff in the beginning. We're going to be getting down to the final 2 matchups that are going to be happening at this pay-per-view. So the next one was Kane versus Gene Snitsky. You guys might be saying, who? Well, one thing you have to know about Snitsky is it wasn't his fault. That was his big thing that he was known for. He was a big man the WWE tried to push years later. And then his biggest thing was he got into the storyline with Kane, and we're shown a package of covering the backstory over Lita losing her baby due to an accident that wasn't Snitsky's fault. And I completely forgot Kane was supposed to be the father of, Lita until I actually watched this, right? So Snitsky then went on in his career to really just kind of be this accident-prone goof that would knock over things backstage, and he would say, that wasn't my fault, or he would bump into cause people matches and say it wasn't his fault. And so that became his tagline. And again, it just kind of only did him a little bit of shtick, and then he got out of the wrestling industry, and we never really seen Snitsky again. So this match was a big man fashion with lots of exchange, blows, boots, Irish whips to the corner. Eventually, Snitsky gets knocked to the floor and is slammed on the exposed concrete. He rolls back into the ring, and Snitsky is down, and Kane goes to the top rope with a double axe handle, but Snitsky responds with a big boot to turn the tide. Snitsky gets the upper hand, but Kane starts sitting up like The Undertaker, his brother, and it freaks out Snitsky. And both men are on the outside, and Kane is thrown into the steps. Snitsky goes and grabs a chair, but Kane basically kicks it right in his face. Both men are then back in the ring, and after a few whips, side slam, etc., big man type moves, Kane hits Snitsky with a boot. Kane goes to the top rope and clotheslines Snitsky. And then after a while, they go back and forth. And then finally, Kane hits the tombstone on Gene Snitsky, and it's countered for a 1, 2, 3. So it's counted at that point. And so, again, my thoughts here on this. This was a decent big man match with a balanced back and forth pacing. They tried to tell a whole story while in the ring with their moves and spots. Kane did a really good job here of making Snitsky seem like an equal. That just really goes to show you why Kane is a Hall of Famer and why Snitsky, really kind of didn't do anything much in the business after. And it's weird because this was probably one of Snitsky's best matches he ever had in the WWE, in my opinion. So I feel like Kane definitely carried him to a good, match and did his job. And the other factor on this too is I probably felt like this match was better than maybe what it was because of the previous 4 matches not being good at all. So the Divas decided that, backstage here we get the Divas decide at the pool, the big payoff is they have a chicken fight. And so they have Maria versus Candice versus Stacy Keibler versus Christy Hemme. And Christy Hemme wins by apparently taking off Stacy Keibler's bikini top. Oh, the Diva days, don't we remember? And now we get to the main event and the sole purpose for this pay-per-view and the reason for it to build right around. And it was the Elimination Chamber match. You cannot go wrong with one of these matches, am I right? Unless you overdo it and do it maybe a couple times a year or a couple times in one night. Then that could be bad. But I'm foreshadowing there. So in this match, we didn't see a lot of these matches. And this was centered around Triple H and Batista. This was the year that Batista would go on to WrestleMania and he would actually win the World Championship match from Triple H, turning on him and his membership with Evolution. So this chamber match was about breaking up Evolution, really. Triple H already betrayed Randy Orton for winning the title, and Dave Batista was starting to have his eyes on the title himself, and he was instead of helping Triple H. And that was really the setup for this match. The other 4 combatants are in the chamber, and Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho actually start out the match, and they're the first 2 to really start this thing off. So in this match, we had, basically Chris Benoit, Triple H, Batista, Chris Jericho, and then we had Randy Orton and Edge. And then we had Shawn Michaels as special guest referee because remember earlier we got that promo with Edge and Shawn Michaels, so we knew something was going to happen there. So as we start out with Jericho versus Benoit, there's some good back and forth between these two. And then basically we forget how good Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho were back in their prime here. Then we get the third man released into the chamber, and it is none other than the Game, Triple H, and the current world champion. Triple H dominates, mostly taking it out on Chris Benoit at first, and then Jericho, and next, both getting slammed onto the steel grating. Benoit is busted open, and his head is rammed into the steel chains for good measure. Jericho takes his moment and gets the advantage to attack Triple H, but Triple H goes for a pedigree, and Jericho backflips him onto the steel floor. And this was back when it was extremely steel floor on the chamber, prior to them changing it years later. Edge is the next man up in the chamber, and he spears almost everyone throughout the whole group. And the outside of the ring, Edge catapults Triple H into the chamber. Triple H then gets back in the ring later, and he is now bleeding from across the nose. He gets multiple move sets and pin attempts, but no 3 counts. And Triple H is kind of a bloody mess at this point. Randy Orton is the next man released into the chamber randomly, and he goes straight for Triple H, as these two had, a previous feud, and he's dragging him all around the ring and just unleashing punishment, the Viper style. Chris Benoit has Orton in a headlock, and Triple H taunts him at this point, slapping his face, but Benoit then lets go of the hold and goes after Triple H, but Orton is up, and he hits an RKO. Bam! Out of nowhere. Edge spears Shawn Michaels, and once he recovers, Shawn Michaels actually basically kicks Edge with some sweet chin music on Edge, and Jericho capitalizes with a pinfall. 1, 2, 3. And that is the foreshadowing foretold, and this would lead to these two having a feud a little bit later on. Benoit hit a flying headbutt off the top of the cell on Triple H, and Jericho clocks him into the walls of Jericho. And then Triple H is about to tap, and Batista is finally the final man released into the match, and he saves Hunter, a.k.a. Triple H. Batista goes wild, and he beats up everybody until he is face to face with a bloody Triple H. The two stare off at each other. You can feel the pressure between them. And just as Batista looks like he's going to turn on Triple H, Jericho and Orton attack Batista. Batista then hits a big Batista bomb, and Chris Jericho on top of Benoit, and he pins him for an elimination. A few moments later, another Batista bomb on Jericho in a count of 3, and another elimination. So just in a matter of minutes, Batista is unleashed, and the animal's unleashed, and he gets rid of both Chris's in a matter of seconds. We are now down to Orton, Batista, and Triple H, and the fight continues. Orton gets the pin on Batista, and you can see that Triple H is in the corner at this point. So as they're beating up on Orton, basically you can see that Triple H, and this was the whole storyline, he was in the corner, he was standing up, and instead of helping Batista, he basically sits back down, and he chooses not to help Batista and allows Batista to get pinned in this match and eliminated. So the result is then being down to Triple H and Orton for the world title. And this would actually come up later in a session on Monday Night Raw the next night. At this point, Ric Flair enters the ring, and Shawn Michaels, the referee, stomps him into the ground for interfering. Then, after that, Triple H hits the pedigree on Randy Orton and becomes the new World Heavyweight Championship. And then Batista is back in the ring along with Ric Flair, and Evolution celebrates. Batista puts Triple H on his shoulders, both doing the thumbs up all the way. And months ago, he actually turned on Randy Orton this way and dropped Randy Orton when Triple H told him to. They were doing some really good tiebacks here with that, but it never panned out yet. And Evolution, everything looks great, and everybody is celebrating Triple H's victory. Well, guys, that was a really good match with the Elimination Chamber. It was definitely made me remind you, like, when you have that many talented wrestlers and Hall of Famers, right? Like, you realize, like, how good the match they can put together, and then add the Elimination Chamber aspect. And I definitely would say that was a thumbs up. Overall, on the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view, with their first stab at it, I think a couple things went wrong. Obviously, injuries you can't help, but that was a lot of bad matches right away. And at the end, they picked up a little steam with the Snitsky match and Kane match, but it wasn't anything to write home to mom about. But then when you get to the Elimination Chamber, you're like, okay, that was a good match. So this really ultimately is a one-match pay-per-view. If you want to watch some of the other stuff just for the cringe effect, definitely check it out. But ultimately, it wasn't a good start. And hopefully we won't have that this weekend with New Year's Day 1 because, there could be potential there. But guys, thank you for watching this, and enjoy your New Year's. And this has been the Retro Review here on Tap Out Talk. So, and as always, we don't like to say goodbye here, but we just simply like to say game over.